Hi friends, I welcome you all here at TNB Academy. In this session, we are going to talk about the subclause 10.1, Non-Conformity and Corrective Action of an International Standard ISO IEC 20000-1 2018, Information Technology Service Management. In this session, we shall cover the requirements of subclause 10.1, non-conformity and corrective action in detail. As the requirements of the clause 10 depend upon the requirements of clause 6 to clause 9, I would like to recommend you referring these clauses of ISO 20000-1 2018 for better understanding of clause 10.1. Now, let's discuss about the outcome of this session. After completing this session, you will be enabled to understand all about the non-conformity and corrective actions in detail. You will also learn about the continual improvement after completing this session. Now, let's start with subclause 10.1. Clause 10.1 has two subclauses, subclause 10.1.1 and subclause 10.1.2. In this session, we will discuss both of these subclauses. Subclause 10.1 is basically a part of the clause 10 improvement requirement within ISO 20000-1 2018. It concerns the actions an organization takes to address service management system oriented non-conformities. The corrective action that follows from non-conformity is also a key part of the SMS improvement process that needs to be demonstrated along with any other consequences caused by the non-conformity. ISO 20000-1 clause 10.1 actually offers up the process for organizations to follow as a fundamental part of the standard, and smart organizations will integrate the process into that of the wider continuous improvement requirement in line with clause 10.2. ISO 20000-1 clause 10.1 actually offers up the process for organizations to follow as a fundamental part of the standard, and smart organizations will integrate the process into that of the wider continuous improvement requirement in line with clause 10.2. Clause 10 contains section 10.1 and 10.2, which covers the act part of plan, do, check, act, PDCA cycle. This clause helps an organization react to non-conformities, evaluate them, and take corrective actions with the end goal of continually improving how it runs its daily activities. Organizations should note the new requirements to consider improvement with respect to its processes, products and services, and the performance of the service management system overall. You should continue to seek objective evidence that improvement is taking place. They should note, however, that while improvement does not need to be continual, it does need to be evidenced as occurring. Auditors should also note the removal of the explicit requirement for the organization to improve its service management system through the review of the service management policy, objectives, audit results, analysis of data and corrective actions, and management review. A simple process approach includes identifying the non-conformity and reacting to it, both correcting or controlling it, and dealing with the consequences. The approach also includes evaluating if there is a root cause issue that should be addressed. Examples can be from pattern, measurement, and other issues that might tie in with other parts of the SMS that could be evident through 9.3 management reviews and other parts of the operation. The process approach contains reviewing the effectiveness of any changes or interventions, that is, monitoring it, and making other changes to the SMS as needed. According to the clause, organizations should make it sure that the work done on the way is documented. Some organizations may have sign-off and approval processes to consider within the process, especially for investments in change or because of delivery failures and losses that may occur. Auditors should look for evidence that the organization is considering improvement in respect of its processes, products, and services, and the performance of the service management system overall. In the case of products and services, this is to meet not just known but predicted requirements. They should note that there is no longer a requirement to audit preventive action as a distinct entity. If top management has set realistic process objectives and there is no evidence of improvement, this information should fed back via the audit report to allow top management to determine what type of action is appropriate. Now, let me explain about non-conformity and how should organizations deal with it. Non-conformity is basically non-fulfillment of a requirement of the service management system. Non-conformity cannot always be avoided because faults do happen in an organization. However, what is important is that the issue is identified and controlled accordingly when it presents itself. Requirements are needs or expectations that are specified, implied, or mandatory. There are several types of non-conformities such as failure to fulfill a requirement either completely or partially of ISO IEC 20000-1 within the SMS. Failure to properly conform to a requirement, rule, or control stated by the SMS. Partial or entire failure to suit legitimate, contractual, or agreed customer requirements. Some examples are persons not performing needless to say by procedures and policies, contractors not providing agreed services, and projects not delivering expected results. When it comes to controlling non-conformity, there are three basic steps. Step 1 is identifying the problem. Step 2 is recording it, and Step 3 is taking appropriate action to put an end to it. In general, there are few steps which should be adopted, and these steps are: Step 1 is identifying the extent and impact of the non-conformity. Step 2 is choosing the corrections so as to limit the impact of the non-conformity. To identify effective corrective action, it is strongly advised to complete a root cause analysis of the issue that occurred. If you don't get to the bottom of why or how it happened, then it is likely that whatever fix you implemented will not be fully effective. Communicating with related persons to make sure that corrections are carried out. Implementation of corrections as decided. Observing things to make sure that corrections have had the intended effect and have not produced any side effects. Acting further to correct the non-conformity if it is still not corrected. Communicating with other relevant interested parties as appropriate. However, corrections alone would not essentially prevent repetition of the non-conformity. Corrective actions can occur after or in parallel with corrections. Let me tell you the subsequent process steps which should be taken. The organization needs to decide if there is a requirement to hold out a corrective action in accordance with established criteria, for example, impact of the non-conformity repetitiveness, review of the non-conformity considering if similar non-conformities are recorded, all the results and side effects caused by the non-conformity, the corrections taken, execute a detailed root cause analysis of the non-conformity, patterns and criteria which will help to find similar situations within the future, perform an analysis of potential consequences on the SMS, considering whether similar non-conformities exist in other areas. For example, by using the patterns and criteria found during the cause analysis, determine actions needed to correct the cause, evaluating if they are proportionate to the results and impact of the non-conformity, and testing for any potential side effects which can cause other non-conformities or major new risks. Finally, to assess the corrective actions to work out whether or not they have actually handled the explanation for the non-conformity and whether it has prevented non-conformities from occurring. This assessment should be impartial, evidence-based, and documented. It should even be communicated to the acceptable roles and stakeholders. So friends, this was the explanation of subclause 10.1, non-conformity and corrective action. And now coming to the mandatory documents requirements under the subclause 10.1. The subclause 10.1.2 states that the organization shall retain documented information as evidence of the nature of the non-conformities and any subsequent action taken and the result of any corrective action. Now, coming to the non-conformity. Please see a sample Auditor Finding Action Report (NC) on screen for having an idea about writing non-conformities under this clause. Please go through this and try to understand the various components of this non-conformance report at your own. So friends, now we have reached at the end of this session. I hope that you have an idea about subclause 10.1, non-conformity and corrective action of ISO IEC 20000-1 2018, Information Technology Service Management Standard. I sincerely thank you all for your interest and attention. Thanks and best wishes.